Okay, welcome everybody to Sierra Mountaineering Club's seminar for October. I'm Darren. I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming tonight. I have a couple announcements per club business to go over real quick. Hello everybody out there watching us online. One is that we, of course, at headquarters here share space with our retail partner, Bobcats, and I wanted to tell everyone who's here and also everybody online that tonight only they're doing 70% off on all apparel, everything that's listed on the website, so that's 70% off, and 50% off all footwear. There's a lot of rock climbing shoes and trail running shoes in particular still here, and 50% off Gregory packs. If you're online and you want to take advantage of this deal, then just type in the discount code 50 and he'll give you 70 for the apparel and 50% off for footwear and Gregory packs. So that's www.bobcatsoutdoor.com. You can find more information on our site. So we're here tonight to talk about the Cascade Volcanoes, and I've got a presentation put together so we can go through them from north to south. Have a little bit of gear and some pictures to go with. So let's go ahead and start talking about those. And if I need to, I'll draw some things here. And you guys online should be seeing a simultaneous me and also the presentation at the same time. So when we're looking at Cascade Volcanoes, how many of you have some inkling of where those are at? Show of hands. Okay, tell me one of them that you know. Anybody?
Rainier.
Mount Rainier. I knew you would say that.
Well, I'm just living here.
All right. Which happens to be, I believe, that one. That's the other side of it. And there are many others. Okay, so they're in a ring of fire, which is all the way around the Pacific. It's where the Pacific plate goes over the North American plate, and it went deep enough that it creates lava upwelling, as is volcanoes' MO. They provide not only massive lahars and pyroclastic debris, but great climbing for us when they're covered with ice and snow. Some of them went up to about 16,000 feet in terms of historically. None of them anymore are higher than 14 and a half. Which is the tallest? No, not Shasta. It's Rainier. Anytime I ask you a question, it's Rainier tonight. Okay? It's 14.4. I only knew that because I should know that from giving the presentation. And the eruptions and the glaciers over time have deteriorated them and whittled them down. So let's take a look at where they're at. We'll start with Washington. Secret, there are a few north of the border. If you want to look at them all in complete lurid detail, get this book, Climbing the Cascade Volcanoes by Jeff Smoot. I think this is the older version, but this is a Falcon guide. So they're all listed in here. But starting in the United States and moving south, the first is Mount Baker, then glaciers. You can see Mount Rainier is in the middle of the state. Next to its little Tahoma. Further south is St Helens, and just a little ways east and south of there is Adams. So, of course, Washington's got a lot. Which state has the most? Don't answer, Rainier. Which state has the most? Go to the next slide. All the mountains in Oregon. Okay, so starting up, it spans the entire state, right? Because the Cascade Range goes from Washington, Oregon into California. So much further up north is Hood, then Jefferson, and then all of these indistinct, somewhat peaks that are quite a bit alike in the middle here, ending with Mount Mclaughlin, and then we cross the border into California, where we have Mount Shasta, and then Lassen, and that's the terminus officially of the Cascade Range. So how many of you have climbed at least one of these peaks? Raise your hand. All right, at the same time, everyone announce one of the peaks that you've climbed. Ready? Go. Shasta, Rainier. Lassen. Okay, that's what I thought. All right, go to the next one. Okay, so what does it take to climb them? It takes some good fitness. It takes a few technical skills. Number one thing I may want to mention here, climbing lots of bad rock. It's because it's volcanic rock, and they're volcanoes, so they aren't known for good rock. What they are known for is elevation and snow and ice and beauty. It's going to require a little bit of route finding, and definitely for most of the routes, I would recommend you have a partner to go with. So that's why we're here as the club. Some good information, and if you're going to climb them all, it's going to take a lot of time. So, but most of the easy routes can be done in just a few days. Some fitness and training. It may be the hardest thing you've ever done, depending on which route you take. Climbing a peak like, say, Shasta is a 7,000-foot ascent, so it's a long way to go up. And the key to that is having good cardiovascular fitness. The climbs may require up to 12 hours to climb, depending on your rate and the elevation that you're going to finally attain. So how to do that? If you're not already, we always say if you're going to be out and about, it's just a great idea to have key cardiovascular fitness. So that would be 2 to 3 times a week, do something for at least an hour. This is like the super bare minimum. And because up high at 14,000, you've got much less oxygen and you're going to be tired carrying a pack. So it makes a difference. So again, let's start at the top. So Mount Baker. Has anyone ever seen Mount Baker? I'm just interested. Just one? Okay, I have. Okay, so what's distinct about Mount Baker is it's a beautiful, one of those, fairly cone-shaped ones, but it's very close to the ocean, and so it gets a lot of wet moisture off of the Pacific and the Sound, and it's also quite far north, so wet plus cold equals ice. So it's one of the iciest volcanoes in the range, and it also has a phenomenal amount of snow. It and Rainier share the record for the amount of record snowfall, which means it's got a lot of crevasses. It does have some interesting events, like a race that goes from the top down to the ocean, Puget Sound, every year. And the standard route is called the Coleman. It's the Coleman Glacier, or the Upper Deming, and it goes about 6 to 8 hours to get up that guy. There's lots of technical routes on Baker, North Ridge and others, and it provides a lot of opportunities for ice climbing. Not terribly high, however, only 10,778. So high enough, but not very a big one. So that's Mount Baker. As we go through the presentation, I'm going to focus on a little more on Rainier and Shasta, since those are the two biggies that a lot of people are interested in, but we're going to do them all. So next is Glacier Peak. Does anybody know where this is in relation to Baker or the state of Washington at all? No? Okay. So Glacier Peak is the only wilderness volcano. It's actually in the North Cascades, kind of really far from most roads. I grew up in Lake Chelan, so you can see it from there. It all requires at least a 10-mile approach to get there. The Sitcom Glacier is the standard route, again 4 to 6 hours, and glacier travel from a high camp. One of the cool things about it is that it will be much less crowded than most of the other volcanoes, and the standard way in passes by really popular hot springs. So you get that as an added bonus. But again, it's not very high. It's one of the lowest. It's only 10.5. But because it is quite north, it still has a good amount of glaciers. So Glacier Peak is a really nice, kind of a more remote wilderness destination. So we got Baker, we got Glacier, and now we'll go to Rainier, which is the next one moving south. It is the tallest peak at 14,410. As you can read here, it's got 25 glaciers on it, so it's got the largest collection of ice and snow outside of Alaska, south of Alaska, in the U.S. that is. We're not counting Canada. Sorry, Canadians. And when you get to the mountain, like for example on the north side, the glaciers there that have fallen off the Willis Wall, there's 900 feet of ice lying at the base of the mountain, so it's pretty massive. What does it take to climb Rainier? Go back. Oh yeah, sorry, go forward. Yes, that's right. It's the most massive volcanoes in many ways, in terms of mass and then circumference. It dominates the skyline for about 100 miles on a rare clear day in Washington State. You can see it from anywhere. So I'm from the Northwest. People call it the mountain. You know what they're referring to, the mountain. It's the only one you can see. And it's about 3 miles high. So I mean, when you come in from the foothills, they're 3,000 to 6,000 feet, okay? But even up at Paradise, which is on the south side, you've got about 9,000 feet to go up to get to the summit. So it's a big guy. Let's go on. So some fun things about it. The world record snowfall, 93.5 feet on Mount Rainier. It has the world's largest glacier caves. 2 miles of passages have been discovered on the mountain, and they are they're still eroding, continuing to erode, but they are there. About 10,000 people attempt this mountain annually, which is a lot. But only about 50% of them are successful. What do you think would be a reason that they wouldn't succeed? What do you think is the number one reason? Fitness, you're right. That's it. It's not crevasses. It's not the wrong color ice axe or anything else. It's just fitness. That's right. So what does it take to climb it? Well, number one, fitness. Lots of cardio and strength for long days at altitude. Because it's so big, it often creates its own weather. So even if the forecast looks amazing, you need to be prepared to move in less than perfect conditions and know where you're at. So people can easily get lost on Rainier since it's so large. And so be prepared for that, please. There is real glacier climbing in snow and ice there, and crevasses of a monstrous variety. So it's the real deal, even on the easiest routes like the DC. So it's important to have glacier travel and self-rescue under your belt. Let's go on to the next one. So just briefly to give you an overview, 14410, it's got two other subsidiary summits, two high places to access it, which would be Paradise here and Sunrise here. This is Camp Sherman. I'm sorry, this is Camp Muir, that's Camp Sherman. So Paradise is here and Sunrise is here, and these are trails up to those places. So these are the two high camps. The DC route goes this direction, and the Evans Glacier route goes that direction. Those are the two most common. We'll just work on the DC for tonight. So the popular route, the Disappointment Cleaver route, 90% of all attempts are on this route. Reason is that the guide services maintain it, and it's accessible, well-known, and the easiest. So what's not to like about that, I suppose? It's a 9,000-foot ascent. The first leg is just as difficult in some ways as the second, because getting from Paradise to Camp Muir requires 5,000 feet of climbing, and you're carrying a heavy pack at that point. The next leg from Muir to the summit is only 4,000 feet with a lighter pack, but you'll be leaving sometime in the middle of the night to make it there and safely back. And then getting back to Paradise is all downhill. So you'll get back eventually some way and you make it back to Muir. So here's Muir, there's the summit. So first day to Muir, second day to the summit, back to Muir, third day back to the trailhead where you started. Let's look at some pictures or some topography along the way. So here's kind of a ground level version. This would be Paradise, the highest you can get your car. Camp Muir here, so that's number one. It starts out paved with lots of wildflowers. You think to yourself, this is going to be awesome. And it is, but in a different way than paved and wildflowers awesome. Like it goes to dirt, and then it gets steep, then it goes to snow, and then you're like, where is the trail? You have to know where you're going at that point. You'll start hitting snow around here. Okay, up to Camp Muir. This is some of the views you may get, but that's eventually where you end up. There is a stone hut there that's kind of a historic place, 10,000 feet. Let's go ahead into the next one, and it looks like this. So it's at 10-2. It only sleeps about 25, and it's first come, first serve. The guide services have their own little thing off to the side. So if you don't have room in the hut, then you need to be prepared to put your tent out. And there are toilets there, but there's no water. So you need to be melting snow at that point. Let's go on to stage 2, which is summit day. Most parties leave between it's early hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And why would they do that? What do you think? Why can't you just leave at 8? What's up?
Well, we actually got caught in it where the ice bridges start to melt.
Yeah.
It gets really freaking dangerous.
Yeah. So you want the hardest, most frozen conditions you can, especially on the ascent, but the descent as well. And if it takes as long as it usually does to get to the top, you're still going to be coming down in the middle of the day. So that's why we want to leave early. So you're going to start out in the dark. You're going to get to the top of the Cleaver, which is here. Here, okay. In the dark still, if you're traveling quickly, it means you're going to go through the Cowlitz Glacier, the Ingraham Glacier, and this part here is still plenty of climbing. Now it's interesting on this map here, over the years this route from the DC to the summit has changed drastically. When we came down this route last year, it actually went like this. It was way over here, way over here, and then it got up to the Disappointment. So the guide services change it on where the crevasses are falling and opening up over the years, but you need to make sure you're ready for stuff like this, okay? These are tents. You see what we're talking about here? So they are massive. We've got some nice videos on our YouTube channel of Shasta, Rainier, Jefferson, many of these volcanoes we've climbed. We have 2 of Rainier, I believe, and there are some shots of us walking the thank you guides, but walking the guide-maintained ladders across the crevasses, and you can see how deep they are. So this is the Ingraham Glacier. Little Tahoma Peak is right behind it, right over here. Okay, this is what it looks like onto the summit. These are just big blocks of ice that you're winding your way amongst, and you can see little people here amongst the teetering towers of ice. So even the easy route is exciting and worth doing. This is the sort of thing you're going to see, a well-worn trail that's maybe even trench-like in some cases with flags, and dubious weather coming and going all the time as the clouds come in and go away, hopefully. And continue. So these are the sorts of views and crevasses you'll get closer to the summit. You'll be above the clouds if you're lucky. And the summit crater, yes, it's still warm up there, so warm that snow has a hard time staying there, and you'll smell sulfur. There will be steam vents, minor steam vents. If you know where to look, you can see little bits of smoke coming out of them. It's still an active mountain in that it's not completely without fire. So let's go on. Next to it is another peak called Little Tahoma, which is a remnant of an ancient Rainier, and I think it was up higher on the mountain at some point and then kind of shook its way down, so it could have been part of the ancient summit. It's 11,138, so if you think about that, it's weird. This is a subsidiary peak on Rainier that's higher than lots of the other Cascade volcanoes. So the Whitman Glacier is the route to take for it. It's a really rotten rock, but a pretty distinctive viewpoint of Rainier nonetheless. That's Little Tahoma Peak. Okay, so we've left the big guy up north, and we're moving south through a couple other smaller peaks and many other smaller peaks. Another one is Mount St Helens. Anybody know what Mount St Helens is famous for? Tell me, just give me one word.
May 18th.
That's right, 1980, okay? The eruption. So it used to be like this, and now it's like this. This is what it looks like now. Just imagine, it was a beautiful Shasta-like mountain back then. So some of the people that climbed it back before 1980 have the honor of having climbed a route that will never be climbed again. They're not there anymore. But actually what's happened since then is that it's actually become a more popular peak because of the notoriety of a place where a major eruption occurred in recent memory, and because now the routes are easier to climb, it's gaining in popularity. So Butte Camp is the best one, 5 hours. Yeah?
So it's not active enough to allow people to climb on it now?
Oh yeah, it's still smoking and building. This is the new lava dome here.
Yeah.
But I guess we all feel confident enough that they've got their sensors on the mountain good enough so that if something happens, we have enough time to stay away. Yeah.
I heard recently, I don't know if it was in the last year or two, but the snowfields up there, they studied them and found that they've actually become defined as glaciers now.
Oh, cool.
Within what's left of the crater.
Oh, good. So it's building us glaciers back? That's good news. All right, cool. So that's Mount St. Helens. Try to pick it out next time you're flying over the state. It's very distinctive now. Another one that's kind of a forgotten volcano, but really shouldn't be, is Mount Adams. And you can see it's quite high, 12,280. One thing that's nice about climbing Rainier from the DC route is you can get up and look across the way to another volcano that in some ways looks very much like Mount Rainier. And it is. It's got lots of glaciers. It's got the same sort of rotten rock. It's just not as popular. It doesn't have a national park so accessible around it. But it's a good one to climb, again, to avoid crowds. And it's another volcano you can put on your belt. It's got many routes. And being 12,000 and with that many glaciers, it's got lots of fun for everybody. It's just kind of out of the way. So another one, now we're crossing the border and going to Oregon, Mount Hood. Mount Hood, although it's not a terribly tall mountain at 11,000, is one of the most popular. It's seen by so many people. It's fairly close to Portland, and the easy route is easy. So people often attempt it, and as I've written up here, lots of unprepared people try it. So it's actually, ironically, one of the most fatal mountains in terms of statistics for the percentage of people who die on it versus those, who don't. But
just be prepared because it's the real deal, even though it's close and not that high. Come in from the south side from Timberline Lodge, and you can even use the ski area as kind of a guide line to get up to a certain point. And then let's go to the next slide. I've got some good pictures here. So this is the ski area. You come up on this side and then follow this major line through here. There's a bunch of finishing options if you wish, but one thing that's really cool about Mount Hood that's kind of distinctive to it is that it has an incredible amount of rime ice. So that's where high velocity winds paste really wet snow or ice onto the mountain, and then they freeze in icicles in the direction of the wind. I may have seen this if you ever climbed Mount Shasta. So that's the reason why this whole cap section here is all white. So when you climb through it, you'll have an ethereal experience. They have names like the Pearly Gates and the Devil's Kitchen and other fanciful terms. Let's go to the next one. Here's a less marked up picture. So you're coming through the moraine here, jumping over, and then you can go either way, but most people come through this way, Pearly Gates, up to the top. It's, what I write, 4 to 6 hours from the top, depending on how fast you go. So Mount Hood is very popular. Another one that you can climb that's a beautiful mountain, but a little more off the beaten path is Mount Jefferson. What's interesting about this mountain is that it's got a very sharp summit. You can see it right here. All of the routes to the summit are 4th and 5th class climbing. It's got fairly sizable glaciers, and it requires a good deal of route finding to figure out where you're at. It's not very easy to move around the mountain because it's such a tortured, eroded mountain. But the most popular route is the Whitewater Glacier, 10 to 12 hours. So it's a long route. It requires usually a whole approach day to get into place. So Mount Jefferson is a beautiful mountain because of its distance from civilization and because of its sharp nature.
Is that Crater Lake there?
Where?
No, that's just...
It's just blue, I think. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to move on to some others that I know less. They're quite a lot shorter in some cases, but they're the rest of the Cascade Volcanoes through Oregon. Then we'll end up with Shasta and then Lassen. So these are all very similar in some ways. They're all quite broken rock, fairly smallish, all in a line south from Jefferson. The first one you're going to come to is Three Finger Jack. It's got basalt, so that is a volcanic type of rock, and the only reason it's there is because some of this basalt was more erosion resistant than the rest of it. So whatever is more erosion resistant here, with these striped bands through it, that's what remained from the erosion that it's gotten. So I'm going to recommend that in a lot of these, it's best to climb them in the late winter, early spring, when they're frozen and the weather's a little better. But Three Finger Jack, 7841. Next is Mount Washington. It's a little more steep. You can see it's about the same elevation, and it's about 6 to 8 hours, but still, again, it's got steep, loose rock. So again, it's important to climb this in, in good conditions where you won't expect to have unstable rock falling on you. And because of that, it was one of the last volcanoes to be climbed. It was tough to get there for those who ventured to be the first back in the day. There are 3 particular mountains called the Sisters, still kind of proximate to Bend, Oregon. They are all about the same height. Most people would like to do them in a traverse. That's kind of the fashionable way to do it. So, but if you take them as if you take them as single peaks, they've got many interesting couloirs, ridges, and gullies you can climb. So because of that, I don't have any one route that's recommended, but if you can pick up a book like this one I showed, then that book again was by Jeff Smoot, Climbing the Cascade Volcanoes. Then they've got a lot of information in there. Okay, let's go on. Broken Top, what a good name. Broken Top is a little higher at 9,000. The Northwest Ridge Grade 2 is, like it says here, some scrambling required. It's the major, rockfall is the major danger like a lot of the others, okay? And you can tell that it's a volcano that's pretty fractured. You can see how varied the look is here. And it's not really a very, aesthetic sort of a peak, but it's got lots of interesting rock on there, so it might be a good one to climb if you're into geology. South is Mount Bachelor. It's a popular ski area, so it's fairly easy to get to the top of that one. You can see it's much more conical in shape, and only 9,000. It's not terribly high, but you can get that could be an easy one to start with if you're after a quest to climb all the Cascade Volcanoes. The 4-mile trail from Bachelor Ski Area Road or from the ski area itself is the best route. So, another interesting one, now moving south, would be Mount Thielsen. It's one of the most steep peaks out there, and it and Mclaughlin, which is coming up next, you can often see them from Shasta. So at 9,182, it's not very steep and not very tall, but you can see from this picture that it's got pretty fierce side here. This north side, I think. Yeah, the north face, they've put up some really difficult routes in recent years there, but they are not in shape very often. The rock, of course, is bad, like the usual, so they have to be climbed in hard ice conditions. Normal route, however, West Ridge, just takes a few hours, and it's class 2. Okay, and then we're coming down to Mount Mclaughlin. Definitely visible from Shasta. It's a nice little cone. These other towns like Medford and so on, you can also see it from there. You drive very close to it when you go north on those highways. And many building stages and relatively little erosion makes a very nice cone-shaped peak. So it's pretty easy to get to the top of. Okay, now we're getting to Shasta. We're doing pretty good on time. So Shasta, being here in California, is probably one of our favorites in terms of volcanoes in the Cascade Range. Its only one that's higher would be Rainier. Rainier and Shasta are the only two that are in the 14,000s. The difference between Rainier and Shasta is that Rainier's had multiple summits and explosions, whereas Shasta is quite needle-shaped in comparison. It does have another hot spot over off to the side called Mount Shastina, and because of that, its circumference is actually larger than Rainier, even though its summit is not as tall. However, it's tall enough. In terms of prominence, which is the difference between the summit and the surrounding land is measured by the officials. It's the 96th most prominent peak in the world and the 11th most prominent in the United States, which is pretty good. 9,822 feet it stands above the surrounding terrain. So luckily for us, we only need to climb 7 of those 10,000 feet because our base camps, the trailheads go up to about 7,000. So you need about 3 days to climb Mount Shasta. Here's a picture of the Summit Pinnacle. It's quite aesthetic. So let's talk about that. So you may need snow and alpine ice climbing up to 60 degrees depending on which route you do. The Avalanche Gulch route is quite a bit less in angle. I think you would say it's probably 45 at the most. You may need to know how to do some snow camping, some off-trail travel and route finding. And glacier climbing skills and know-how is important if you're going to be traveling on any of the glaciers, like the north side or the west side. And it can create its own weather too, just like Rainier. So here's a picture of it. Let's get ourselves oriented here. So this being Misery Hill would mean that Helen Lake is there. This is Cascade Ridge. So the Avalanche Gulch route is a southwest route that comes up this direction to Shasta. And these are the other big glaciers: Whitney, Bolam, Hotlam, Winton, and a very minor couple here. So they're all on the north side. We're just going to talk about the Avalanche Gulch route tonight, because that's the popular way. Like Rainier, it takes most of all of the attention. So here's a good picture of it, standing at some spot not very far from the car. The spot you're going to camp at is also at 10,000, like it is on Rainier, Lake Helen, or Helen Lake. So the first set would be to start about 7,000. Your total ascent's going to be, as you can see here, 7,200. If you don't want to stay at Lake Helen, you can also stay at Horse Camp, which is a lot further down here, but not so hard for the first day. And it takes about 8 hours to ascend. We're looking at May to July for the right time frame. Yeah, you have a question?
Well, actually, a great spot if you go to one moraine below that is 50-50.
Oh, okay.
If you want a much quieter experience.
Is that like right here?
Yeah, it's like the
Okay.
last moraine before you go up.
The last moraine before Lake Helen? Okay. I've never stayed there.
Nice quieter spot.
Yeah. All right, cool. 50-50. You heard it here first.
It adds only about 30 minutes.
30 minutes?
to your climb.
Okay. Well, let's move on. So you can see this is what Helen Lake looks like, even on weekdays somewhat. So don't expect to have the place to yourself. There is, however, a ranger there. There's designated bathrooms, but there's no reliable surface water. So just bear that in mind. It is a great way to climb Shasta, though, because you won't have any trouble getting lost. I mean, you won't have any trouble staying on the trail. You won't have any risk of getting lost, because there will be people as early as 10 who start to climb that mountain, and between 12 and 4 there'll be just an ant trail of lights going up the hill for the next day, so you just follow the lights, okay? So let's look at day 2. Yeah, so this will be the first part of your climb. This would be Helen. You'd go up to an area called Red Banks. This is where most of the rock fall occurs. It's red rock that's popping out there. And every time I've been out there, I've had ice and little bits of rock whizzing by me. So even though it's a popular route, it's not necessarily the safest. The other major hazard is actually the other people that are on the route with you. So my thought would be leave early before everybody else, and then if you can, take skis and get down before them. But leave at least 2 hours before dawn. So once you get over the Red Banks, you may think you're at the top, but you've got to get up another hump called Misery Hill. And once you get to the top of that, you may think you're at the top, but you're not. Then you have to walk across this plateau like this, heading toward this amazing summit castle here. It's worth it. You come up on this castle, and that's the actual summit there. It's a really spectacular summit. If you're blessed to have a great view, you can see every direction just as far as you can get. So it's awesome. And it also makes for great pictures. Go to the next one. Pictures like this. So we've got quite a few SMC summit photos that look like this. We climb this mountain many times a year. So, all right, move on. Our last one tonight is Lassen Peak. So the little brother or sister, I suppose, to Shasta. It's interesting in that it actually had a recent eruption outside of St. Helens. It's the next most recently erupted. So you can see a picture here. Notice the cars. So from what I have, it was 1915 when that blew up. And so it obliterated lots of forest on the north side. It's still called the devastated area, I think. And it was born about not too long ago, geologically speaking, only 11,000 years ago as an active vent on the side of Mount Tahoma or Tahoma. And Brokoff Mountain itself is a remnant of that ancient megavolcano. So that volcano just blew itself to bits, and this new vent came up, and it's now Lassen. It's very active still. If you go there, I'd recommend you take some time and go to the geothermal areas like the boiling mud pots, and there's a place called Bumpus Hell. Yeah. It doesn't smell too good, but it is really interesting. So that's Lassen. Climbing Lassen Peak, it's not too tough. It's not very high in elevation, so it's a nice hike, especially 3 seasons of the year. So we tend to go there in winter a lot because then we get to go in on skis and have kind of a nice snowy experience. If you're into that kind of thing, then that would be the time to climb it. And otherwise, Lassen itself is a really nice volcano that's not too tough. And there's some other peaks like Brokoff, Diller, and Pilot Pinnacle that are close by that are worth climbing too. So the Lassen Peak Trail is only about 3.5 hours, and it's 2.25 miles, so not too hard. All right, we did really good. Go to the next slide here. Okay, so I have finished our tour from north to south. Now it's time for us to go back or go through any questions or comments you guys have. So with all that in mind, is there any peak you'd like me to revisit so we can go through it in more detail? Got any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Go ahead.
mostly interested in Shasta.
Okay.
I took a road trip out there last year and looked at it, and it was, you know, you're showing all these pictures with snow on it, and it was bone dry all the way to the top. It was just
On the south side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that normal?
Yes. There's no glaciers on that side.
Are there any routes that go up that side?
Yes, the routes are still there in theory, but there's not a good time to climb them because of all the scree. So for the south side, you should probably not climb it any time after July nowadays, because by that point the snow will be gone. But this is why, you want to go back to the slide that has topography for Shasta? It's probably 5 to 10 slides back. Right there. Go back. Stop. And there. Great. So this is the side you're talking about right here. But that's why on the other sides of the mountain, you know, on the north side of peaks in the northern hemisphere, there's going to be more snow because they receive less sun. And it's colder and snowier there. So that's why there's glaciers on that side. So Shasta is a year-round peak, but only on this side of the mountain. So, my recommendation is to come in at the Northgate trailhead, which is over here, and possibly do the Hotlam-Bolam Ridge route, which is right here. It's no harder than Avalanche Gulch, and instead of being in a hole, you're actually on a ridge, so it's more aesthetic, and it's not technical, and you climb right between these two glaciers, which is really cool, and get to the top. It's the same time frame as Avalanche Gulch.
3 days?
Yeah. One day to get to high camp at 10, 9, 10. The next day to climb it, get back to high camp, and then to get back out to your car and drive home. So I think the thing that deters a lot of people is it's 8 miles of dirt roads to get to the trailhead. However, it's well signed, okay? And then from there, it's the base camp is kind of up to you. There's many different areas you can go to, but most of them are all good. And in some ways, they're better than Avalanche Gulch, Helen Lake, because there's a 50-50 chance that they'll have water there, especially the camps at 9-6 right here. So the route's pretty straightforward, and you can see your base camp all the way back down the ridge. So
How's the crevasse danger on?
there is none. There is, however, one bergschrund you're going to need to cross right about here where the two of them touch, almost touch. And it's pretty much right out of camp, and it's fairly visible. And if you climb it in May or June, which is recommended time frame, it'll likely be filled in. And I've never climbed it later than June, and I've never even seen it. So, but it's there, apparently, if you climb it later in the year. Our team that climbed Shasta in September, they went up that route, and they said it was there. So they just walked around it. So that's the only danger. That's a good one. I mean, we do a whole presentation on Shasta, which is we're not going to do tonight, but there are easy routes up all of these glaciers that are accessible for people. And if you want to, you can make them harder. Like the Hotlam's got plenty of crevasses. This is where we do glacier travel crevasse rescue in May for the club. The Whitney has the distinction of being the longest in length glacier in California. It also has lots of glaciers on it. And then the other two, the Bolam and the Winton, are both a little smaller and not as crevassed as the Winton and the Hotlam. And this one in particular, the Winton, is a really great glacier if you want to go to a side of the mountain and have a nice snow or ice climbing experience, especially if you're planning on using skis and the way up or the way back. It's a really nice ski down this glacier. So that one's more of a year-round ski destination. But all of these are interesting locations. So the trailhead here is Northgate, and the one on this side, gee, I just forgot the name of it at the moment. Anyone know what it is? Clear Creek. Okay. I think that would be it. It's right over here, right proximate to Winton. It requires like 15 miles of dirt roads. So, all right. So yeah, Shasta, there's a lot to know about it.
Really? That sounds kind of
Sam on north side, you're just generally alone.
Yeah, it's a great way to go. Yes?
So you wait till the snow's gone, because you usually close those off in the wintertime, right?
Oh yeah, they're not accessible. That's why the climbing season on the north side starts around May, because they're snowed in till then. But of all of them, Northgate will be one of the most melted out quickly, and that's the one people monitor the most. So the updates will be frequent and accurate about that one.
And then you mentioned skiing down. Do you have to skin up, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can skin up, and then if it gets too steep, you could take your skis off and just boot pack up.
That sounds really cool. You don't have to worry. That's the cool thing about it. You don't have to worry about going into a crevasse halfway down or something.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
I'd say of all of the options for skiing, the two best are the Whitman Glacier. It's more of a year-round ski, and then the west face, which is over on this side. But it's not a glacier, so there will be times of the year where it won't be possible. But both of those are pretty straightforward, consistent slopes down from the summit that would be fun. Multiple thousands of feet, depending on where you start at. So, but you have to earn your turns. You only get one run. But no lift ticket, you know. So, yeah, and it can be climbed in the winter too. So let's talk just a tiny bit more about it. So Cascade Ridge is one that has captured a lot of attention of the club for whatever reason in recent years. So a lot of our club members attempt to climb this every winter, and we usually get shut down by weather before we even get up there. But we have been successful now and then, and I'm sure it'll continue. So with that being said, there is a way to climb Shasta all year round, you know, because this trailhead at Bunny Flats available is plowed. You could climb Avalanche Gulch, although by its name, you can understand that's not a good one to climb in the winter. But Cascade Ridge is. So you could alternate between Cascade Ridge, West Face, Sergeant's Ridge, and Green Butte, and Avalanche Gulch, and have a whole swath of nice climbing opportunities available from a year-round trailhead, you know, for a large part of the year. And when all of these melt out, then you can jump to the north side and continue your adventures. So it's a great destination. So that's Shasta. Is there other questions about other Cascade volcanoes I can answer, or got any thoughts about those? Okay.
Thanks for answering my question.
All right, you're welcome. All right. So does anybody is there a way we can interact with people online, Scott? Not really.
Yeah, no one's asking.
Nobody's asking any questions? All right, you guys online, if you have any questions, this is your chance. Okay? We'll hang out here for just a few minutes, and if there's something I can answer for you, I will. Otherwise, we're going to eat all the cookies that you didn't get because you didn't come. So it's your time to ask questions, and you guys too, if you have another one that pops up. So.
Do you guys run trips up Rainier other than DC? Do you guys
Oh,
run
yeah.
trips or-
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can talk about SMC trips real quick. So what do? We climb Rainier about every year. So far, we've only climbed the Couts and the DC. We've done Couts twice, and we've done DC 3 or 4 times, depending on how you count it, because we come down the DC route. We're hoping to do Emmons, Liberty Ridge, probably in the future, maybe next year, depending on how we can arrange people to do that. Shasta, I mean, on average, we're climbing it 4 to 7 times a year, somewhere in there. On all of the routes that I mentioned, most notably Avalanche Gulch, Hotlam Bolum, and Cascade. Those are our 3 favorites. Hood, we've gone to Hood 2 or 3 times in the last 5 years or so. And we climbed Adams last year. We've never sent a trip to Baker, but we hope to. Possibly this year we may get there. We've never sent a trip to St Helens. None of the other Oregon volcanoes except for Jefferson have been attempted by the club. But we would like to get back to Jefferson and get that one done again. And we've gone to Lassen many times, but always in the winter. Always in December. And it's always snowed a lot. So we've only been successful, I don't even know if we have been. I know the 2 trips I've been on have been blown off the mountain. So it's earned my respect as a 10,000-foot know-nothing mountain. But we'll probably go back and get blown off again this year. But I guess that's the fun of it. So those are the Cascade volcanoes. That's the rundown for us. But yeah, Shasta and Rainier, no surprise, via the survey, even this small sampling, those are the 2 that get the most attention. So we'll continue to go there. But we hope to run continued expeditions to these peaks, this year and the years to come. They're great summits. Any questions online? Nope? All right. Okay, we'll bid you adieu. Thanks for checking in with us tonight. Check us out at smc.club or sierramountaineeringclub.org. Thanks for coming tonight, you guys. We'll catch you later.